Go to past three out of the last 4 days. EA has released their rankings for offense, defense, toughest places to play every day for college football, and I wanted to go over how terrible they are. I've loved everything about this. I'm a huge college football, like 25 or college football game guy. I had NCAA 14, played the shit out of that, and I've loved everything that they have released about the game, except for no mascot mode, which is whatever. No high school, which sucks, and Road to Glory, but this was it's just bad. This one was just really, really bad. And I meant we'll go to toughest places. Kyle Field. I saw some people talking about it. It's like cool. Like what does this mean? What does toughest places to play mean? And I always just assumed it's when you're. I don't even know what it is. Is it when you're good? I assume it's just atmosphere, and they're going atmosphere based on like average or something. Honestly, I don't know if they mean. I assume it has everything to do with atmosphere and less about the teams. So people were saying like, what is it? Is it what it looks like? Because like Tennessee looks really nice. Kyle Field looks is quote like the atmosphere. I don't know. I really don't know what it means, but I don't think in any sense Kyle Field is number one. I think number one is I think everybody was pretty shocked when it was not LSU when they're three. Alabama, like I want to say this. I have only been to two college football stadiums. I plan to go to a lot more this year, but Clemson is the only big atmosphere I've ever been to in my life. And that game was like versus Georgia Tech. I mean, it was a really cool atmosphere because they were just off the national championship and all that. It was the first game, but I've never been to like any other place like a really big game. So I honestly, as I'm just going off of what I've heard and everything. I've never been to any. Wow, Boise State got into the top 25. I didn't realize that. And nothing said has ever heard has said Texas A&M, Alabama, or Ohio State are top five. Wisconsin still top 10. I've heard. I heard even Oklahoma fans were shocked that they were here. So maybe I want to talk more about the rankings, but I just really can't fully talk about how loud these stadiums are because I haven't been there. So we'll more glaze past that. Sound and Size Deep Dive, which was sick. And then here's when everybody lost their mind because I think the toughest places to play when you're top 25 is not going to matter as much and it's going to move around like a lot and it's a very, very easy thing to move around. But the rankings is like a whole different story because nah. Georgia number one offense tied with Oregon, fine, no problem. Alabama maybe some questions. Texas no questions. Ohio State I would should be three, but again LSU Miami is coming in. Miami's maybe a little high, but with Camp Moore with Mario Cristobal's best team, I have no idea. And then the tomfoolery starts at 8 with Colorado. Now from talent, Shador Sanders top 5 QB, top 10 QB. I don't think anybody's arguing out of that. Maybe a top 10 receiving core with Jimmy Horn, Xavier Weaver, Travis Hunter. That's a great receiving core. Dylan Edwards is gone at running back. You have questions at running back. The offensive line was literally the worst in college football, and they know they made efforts to do it. So maybe you can say from a talent base, this is a top 25. Maybe if they were down here, you can convince me, even though they were 82nd in yards per game going, or 83rd last year, because of the changes they made to the offensive line and all the returning talent they have in offense. But 8 is ridiculous. Missouri, sure. Clemson. Clemson is the butt of every offensive joke that is not named Iowa. That one's pretty shocking. Utah, Penn State, Ole Miss is low, but this all feels fine. Kansas and Arizona. Arizona should be higher. Their offense is really good. The rest, Memphis. I didn't realize. 3 former AAC schools. Florida State. They've lost a lot of talent. I'll give them that. The really shocking one that's not on here is Oklahoma State. It was rumored that Ollie Gordon is going to be the highest rated player in the game, and they have a returning quarterback. How is that not a top 25 offense? And then defenses. Ohio State 1. No one's arguing that. Not one person is arguing that. Georgia 2. Fine. No one is arguing that. Oregon, Alabama, maybe a little high. But again, there's a lot of question marks, a lot of movement there, whatever. Clemson 5, fine. Notre Dame, what was Notre Dame in offense? They were 17 actually. Okay. thought they were a lot higher. Texas, not the best defensive team, but they have a lot of talent there. Michigan up there makes sense. Penn State, Utah getting a lot of love. Love that though. Iowa probably low, just whatever everything they've ever had. USC at 16. USC at 16. They couldn't stop anything. Literally, again, just I'm gonna say it, with Clemson being about a very offensive joke, they're about a very defensive joke, and they're at 86 overall in 16. Auburn, LSU. LSU doesn't have a great defense either. Colorado. Again, the Colorado love is crazy. Oklahoma State, fine. North Carolina, whatever. Whatever about the rest. But one thing, I'll say that last. I'll make that my final point. And then they have the top teams. Georgia 1, makes sense. Also, I don't know, because they have the separate rankings on the side. Like, one, I didn't play college or NCAA 14 or NCAA 13 or whatever when the game was coming out. So I don't know if they had the AP poll as the rankings when you're in play now and shit. It doesn't really matter. It's all, for visuals. Or what? Or is this going to be when you load up the game, these are going to be the rankings that are on the side? I care about that maybe more than the average person, but I am curious. But Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon. Makes sense. Alabama, 4 to 6 ranked. Clemson at 6. Clemson is not a top 10 team in the country. Notre Dame, LSU, Penn State, Utah, fine. Michigan, maybe a little low, but they did lost a lot of talent. Florida State, fine. Miami, maybe a little high. Texas A&M is not a top 20 team in the country. Ole Miss at 15 is ridiculous. Ole Miss is one of the favorites to make the college football playoffs, that are more likely than not going to make the college football playoffs. In terms of odds, it's Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon. I think it may be just Utah and then Ole Miss. Colorado is not a top 25. They're not a top 50 team in the country, sitting here at 16. Oklahoma, sure, they could just do bad. They have a bad, really hard schedule. Wisconsin, sure. USC, maybe a little high. Virginia Tech, that's a lot of love. And I actually appreciate the Virginia Tech love, because they have the most returning talent in the country. NC State, Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma State, all sitting there in Iowa. Now, one thing I noticed is that Iowa had an 88 overall defense. And their offense should be, we assume, in the low 70s, and they're an 87 average. So the averages are going to be a lot higher than the actual averages of defensive offense. But one thing that I'm going to say that is good is that the difference between the teams is going to be so high in overall. And especially in offense and defense, you see the highest was a 90 what? Lowest defense was an 84 on the top 25. That's a 12 overall difference already in the top 25. We are going to have such big differences between overalls, and I love that. And it's really going to show the difference between it. But the rankings itself were bad. And I know it's something to change week to week, and everybody's like, oh, it's going to change, it's going to change. It's going to change how Madden changes their overalls. Players will go up 1 overall a week, 2 overall a week. It's going to be the same kind of system at every sports game uses. So I just don't see these overalls changing drastically. Like, is Colorado in 1 week going to be an 82 overall? No. Maybe if they play really bad throughout the year, they can go down to like a 79. But that throughout the entire year, you're going to see that the last roster update. So, I just don't get it. And one thing is, the Tennessee hate was crazy. The Tennessee 13th. We're going to say after the past 3 years how big and how grand Neyland Stadium is, and what has happened in Neyland Stadium, that they're not top 20, top 10. And we're going to say with the talent Tennessee has that they're not a top 25 in any of this. They're the 12th best odds to make the playoffs. I don't know. There's a lot of teams. Nebraska, a big one that got snubbed from everything. It just really wasn't good. I mean, it's not the biggest deal in the world. Obviously, the rankings suck, but I'd rather just the game be good with all of it, and everything else looks amazing. But it sucks. The rating sucks. It's really the only bad point. So, thank y'all for letting me rant. Join the Discord server.